When I first started my brand building journey, one of the biggest knowledge gaps I found I had was in the area of shipping. Like, I had no idea how a product got all the way from a supplier in China over to wherever it was being sold. No clue. And I think it's one of the things now I still see that even if people have been through a course or kind of learnt about this for a lot of time, they don't really know exactly what is happening along the process. And it can lead to frustration when you face delays or get questions from certain, agents, whether it's your supplier or your freight forwarder along the journey. And so today I wanted to do a video that's going to clear that up and help you along the journey. Awesome. Well, welcome to another Brand Builder Upskill, where we break down the latest and greatest skills and strategies that you can deploy right here, right now in your private label brand. And if you like these kind of tutorials, if you find them helpful, definitely do subscribe, because we've got a whole load more planned and coming up. It's going to be a great few months of content coming your way, so make sure you are subscribed for that. And also, if you do have any questions about the topic, of course, do feel free to leave them in the comments below. I always reply to comments and would love to chat to you more there. So the whole process of shipping, I taught a lesson inside of Brand Builder University recently, and we called it from the supplier floor or the factory floor to the customer's door. And unfortunately, I didn't come up with that quote. That's from my mate Stu, who is the owner of Activate. They're a 3PL, a fulfillment service that we use, and a great company, definitely worth checking out. And he uses this phrase. He does some teaching for us inside of Brand Builder University, and he talks about how their passion is the shop floor, the factory floor to the customer's door. I'll get it right in a moment. And he talks about how, just understanding that whole process, that whole journey is really, really key. And so I did a lesson and broke down literally the front to back, end-to-end process of just shipping, right? Not the whole production and then, this side of it. It's just that shipping phase, because I find that a lot of people get confused about what is actually happening. They think that their supplier is just putting the goods on its own private boat and then bringing it over, and then it's going straight to a warehouse. But there are so many moving parts, so many different people involved, that I wanted to just break it down real quick and show you the whole process from end to end, and hopefully it's going to be helpful for you. All right, so I've got this great graphic here from this Aussie company called Ice Cargo, great Aussie freight forwarding company, and they've made up this graphic which really helps, I think, just kind of paint the picture of the whole process. And we're going to, of course, like any good story, start at the beginning, the origin of your product, and I'm going to talk you through stage by stage and give you a bit of an idea, more so of the time more than anything else. Obviously what's happening at each stage, but how long each one takes, so that you can be fully prepared for how long your product is actually going to take to ship, whether you're shipping it by sea or air. I would imagine 99% of people are shipping by sea because it is far cheaper and far more economical, but we'll see. We'll go through it. All right, packing is the first stage, which of course is done by your supplier. That's when the supplier packs the product into the cartons and gets it ready to be shipped out, FBA labels on if it's going to Amazon, or shipping marks put on, all that kind of stuff. And then the next thing they're going to do is they're going to load it at the depot or at the factory. They're going to load it up into a truck that is going to take it to where it's meant to go. Now, in terms of timings, the timings in these blue boxes here, this is, of course, is depending on the product. It's depending on how hard it is to pack up, how much product you've ordered. If you've ordered 500 units versus 5,000 units, of course, there's going to be a time difference there. But generally speaking, once the product is packed, and I would recommend you've done an inspection on that product and you've paid the balance, it really only takes sort of 1 to 2 days to actually load that product up. Generally, often it can be done in 1 day. The next thing then is going to happen is that product is going to be transported from the factory floor to the port of origin, so where we're going to be shipping out from. And again, this generally takes 1 to 2 days and is going to be pretty quick depending on where you are in China. If you are completely the other side of China, then it's going to take longer to get to a port than if you're right near a port. But even if you're right near a port, often you have to book trucks, and and this is what a lot of people forget, is there's a very human element to this. You have to wait for people to literally get your boxes off of the floor and onto the truck. So there needs to be there's a queue sometimes for some of this, and we forget, because we're so far away from it. We forget there's real humans loading real boxes, and sometimes it does just take a bit of time. Next up, when your products arrive at port, they're going to have to go through customs clearance. You're going to have to get forms filled out. You're going to have to make sure all of the cartons have got made in China on them, or wherever you've got them made. You've got all that stuff happening. And again, depending on volume, depending on time of year, how much product, again, it's going to take 1 to 2 days in order to do this. And then what we've got is the cutoff time at port. So you might think, well, as soon as it's past customs, we're on the road, we're heading out, the product is on its way to me. But as you can see down here, there is a cutoff time at the port, and I'm going to talk you through those. Okay, the first one, it says LCL cutoffs. So LCL stands for less than container load, and that means where you would maybe using a freight forwarder service whereby they are using a whole container and you are just filling part of it. This is the most common route because especially when you're starting out, you don't have the 3, 4, 5,000 units that it would take to fill a container. To fill a 20-foot container is about 3,000 shoebox size boxes, units, and if you have, again, shoebox size units, it'll be about 7,000 of them to be in a full size 40-foot container. So generally speaking, you're going to be using less than container load. So that means that you are having to get the product there 7 days before sailing, and that's quite a bit of time to add on to this, which will add up in a moment. Then full container load generally is only around 2 days because obviously, as you can imagine, if you're just shipping part of a container to the port and then they have to load it all up at the port, it needs to be sorted, it needs to be packed, it needs to be made sure it all fits. Whereas if you're shipping a whole container, they can just either load it in a container at the supplier, unlikely, or just load it all into an empty one at the port, which is generally what tends to happen. So that's why it's a little bit quicker. And then you've got the air freight, the cut off generally 1 day before flight because there's no containers to worry about. You just kind of put the cartons on the plane and you're ready to go. So again, that gives you a bit of a variable there for time ahead of when the actual journey begins. So then you've got the freight journey. Now, depending on, again, the type of freight you're using, if you're using express air, generally it would be around 7 to 14 days. If you're using normal air, it would be more around sort of the 14-day time period. And then if you're using sea freight, generally speaking, this can be anywhere from 25 to 40 days, depending on the route, how direct it is, where exactly you're going, any delays. Often you'll get quoted around the 25-day mark, and people get excited because they think, well, I've paid my balance, and in 25 days, I'm going to be selling product. But as you're probably beginning to see, there's a bit more to this process than that. So this 25 to 40-day period takes place, and your goods arrive. Now it's time to start saying, well, there are some more things to happen as well. Of course, has to be offloaded at the port. When it gets there, those containers, those big metal things that you see on the back of trucks down the motorway, that's not what your product is going to be going to an Amazon warehouse or a third-party warehouse in. It's going to be in the back of a truck. Because generally speaking, when you see them on backs of trucks, it's not because they've got goods in them. Most often it's because they're transporting them to storage around different places. In Manchester, where I live, there's a huge container storage yard where they get stored when there's not enough room for them at port, which at the moment they're really backed up because of 2020 and all of the closures because of the global pandemic. There's a lot of shortage and a lot of backup of just different services. It's like domino effect all over the world. It's pretty crazy right now. But once they've offloaded that product off of the out of the container, then it's time for the next phase. However, that offloading again is dependent on the service you have used. Offloading down here, we've got to look at again whether it's LCL, FCL, or air freight. LCL is going to take you between 3 to 6 days, and that is a very frustrating sort of amount of time when your product has arrived and you still got to wait that 3 to 6 days. I once had a product stuck in, I think it was the Beast from the East, the storm a few years ago, and we had products in there for about 3 weeks, and they start to charge you storage, and it becomes a bit of a nightmare. But generally speaking, 99% of the time, it's usually around 3 or 4 days. And then if you are sort of at the level where you're doing full container load, of course, you can expect that to be far quicker, a day or two, air freight 1 day. Again, just taking it off the plane. So then you need to go through your border inspection. Customs are going to take a look at the product. They're going to look at all the forms. They're going to make sure the duties are all calculated correctly. They're going to apply VAT, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, those inspections and everything like that, again, takes time. It does really vary depending on the volume, time of year, and so on. But it can take sort of 1 to 7 days there as well. And then finally, your transport. Once you've got it through customs, then it needs to, again, be put on a truck. You need to find a time for that truck to to take it from where it's going to where it's going to be. If you're delivering to Amazon, again, Amazon will often be very slow to give delivery slots. If you speak to your freight forwarder, they will often at the end of the journey say to you, well, we're just waiting for Amazon now to give us a delivery slot, because Amazon have these big kind of warehouses where their trucks just back into, and it's all very automated, so you need a specific slot. You can't just turn up at an Amazon warehouse and drop some boxes off. It does not work like that, unfortunately. So again, you've got another 1 to 2 days here. So as you can see, these kind of numbers here, they begin to add up when you probably initially just thought it was going to be this number here, and you start to see that if you're doing less than container load by sea, what is quoted as maybe, or some people say, oh, it's only 30 days by sea, you'll be getting rich quick real soon. Actually, there's a bit more of a process to that, and maybe you have a 30-day lead time, and then you've got, let's go on the positive side here, maybe you've got 1 there, and then if you're doing LCL, that's going to be another sort of 7. So we're already at 10 days here. Before we even get to this phase. And then let's be positive and say this is only 3 days here and this is only 1 day. But again, if we're doing LCL, it might be 4 days here. So there's another 8 days on the back end. So not only have you got the 30 days, which often is generous here, but you've also got the 10 and the 8 to add on to that. So what was quoted as around sort of 25, 30 days actually often comes up a lot closer to something like 50 days. So this is kind of like the end-to-end process, and these are the kind of timelines that you should budget for, particularly in your reorder. If you're reordering a product, don't just base your reorder calculations on 30 days shipping by sea. It's like this commonly quoted length of time that people think that it's going to take to ship by sea. Yeah, sure, like this phase of it might do, but all of these other phases are going to take a fair amount more time, and they're going to add on to that. And if you budget for that 30-day period, you're often going to get left short. So that's kind of the end-to-end process from factory floor in here to almost customer door in there. And hopefully that's been somewhat informative. Hopefully that shows you the different breakdown of each stage. There are stages within the stages, of course, but had to keep this a relatively short video timeline. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. If it is, let me know. Any questions you have, let me know down below. And if you like this kind of stuff, subscribe to the channel. And you follow me on social media if you want to follow my journey at building brands. Join the Brand Builder Society free Facebook group if you want to deep dive into this anymore. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video real soon.